investment, I would like to address the question to my guest, former Minister Adel Afiouni. And I want to refine the same investment question into asking, as a former Minister of Investment and expert on both the European and Middle Eastern investment landscape, can you tell us more about what specific types of investment in the EUROMED to GCC zones, back and forth, can help stabilize economies and promote more exchange in investment and in trade?
Hi, good morning, Patricia, and thank you again for inviting me today. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Again, thank you for the invitation. You address a very important question. I want to start by kind of giving a bit of background. I think we live in a world where economic collaboration and economic partnerships are a key engine for stability and political harmony. And I always like to quote this quick anecdote, which I think should drive a lot of our thinking. In 1992, Bill Clinton coined the famous phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." And that was his main slogan to win the elections. And I think that phrase, or that's basically quote, became a driver for a lot of the policies over the last 30 years across Europe, the Middle East, and everywhere. The economy drives economic stability, reduce conflict risk. And we live in a region which has been plagued by conflicts for decades and even centuries. Therefore, economic collaboration will play a very important role, and it's very important to focus on it. Why? Because interdependence and economic collaboration create shared interest. So countries become interdependent, conflicts becomes costly for all parties involved, nations start dialogue, and with strong trade relationships are less likely to jeopardize those ties through war or instability. For example, the European Union, which was formed precisely after the Second World War, is a clear example of how economic collaboration and partnership can remove the risk of conflicts and create stability. Very important for our region as well. Also, the incentives, when you have stability and when you have trade and investment and jobs and growth, therefore that generates wealth, and this reduces the risk for internal conflict as well as external conflicts. Prosperous nations don't have any incentives to go to war or to create issues. They have too much to lose. And that's also what we see in the Middle East, for example, in the GCC. Those nations, by diversifying their economies and strengthening their trade ties with global partners, have created really one of the rare islands of stability and resilience. So all this to emphasize the role of the economy in creating stability and sustainable partnerships and collaboration and removing the risk of conflicts. Having said that, also from a background perspective, I want to emphasize something very important. Economic collaboration alone is not enough if we don't remove the factors that can undermine its effectiveness. And in particular, political and historical grievances, and there are plenty of them in our region. Deep-seated political, religious, or ethnic disputes can override economic considerations. Also very important to stress unequal economic benefits. Relationships of trade and exchange of and collaboration have to be on equal footing. No party should feel exploited or marginalized in an economic relationship. And third aspect, obviously, is external disruption. We live in a region where there is a lot of interferences from external powers, and these external factors driven by ideology, religions, can destabilize even economically integrated regions, and we are witnessing this on a daily basis. All this to basically say that economic collaboration is very important in our region as a pillar of stability, but it's also crucial for stability that it will be complemented by a strong resolution of some of the outstanding conflicts that we have been suffering from for the last 60, 70, 80 years. And in particular, I want to stress, because we live in the middle of that, the importance of addressing the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis. We cannot talk about economic collaboration and partnership in the East Mediterranean and between Europe and the GCC or the Middle East without stressing the importance that the elephant in the room, or the most important factor that can disrupt that and has been disrupted that for stability for decades now, is that we have a conflict that is still unresolved, and we have basically a situation that is unsustainable, and we need to flag that. Otherwise, we're just talking theory, and there will always be risk. Now, let me get to the second part of your question, which is where should the investment or where should the collaboration focus? Obviously, there are a lot of sectors. The macroeconomic context today, which makes it very important, is that Europe is facing significant economic challenges. There are the effects of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, inflationary pressures. All this have disrupted supply chains and increased energy costs over the last few years and slowed economic growth. As Europe navigates those challenges, there's a growing emphasis on the need to diversify trade partnerships and fostering collaboration, in particular with regions that offer complementary resources and demand. And precisely that's what the GCC can offer. The GCC has witnessed over the last decades very robust economic growth, obviously driven by high energy prices in recent years. However, these economies have changed dramatically. They're acutely aware of the need to transition from oil dependence to more diversified and sustainable and technology-driven growth models. And the ongoing plans, whether it's in almost in every single country in the GCC, reflects a commitment to investing in sectors like technology, infrastructure, renewable, which align perfectly with Europe's strength in innovation and industrial expertise. They're both next door, so it's a no-brainer for Europe and the GCC to become natural partners. And Europe can bring technological leadership, advanced manufacturing, agricultural abundance, while the GCC obviously offers capital and energy resources, but also growing consumer markets that are very important for Europe. So the synergies are there. If I want to stress few sectors that I think are, I would pick myself for trade and business flows, for me, it's driven by the need for Europe to access energy resources and investment capital and fast-growing markets in the GCC, consumer and industrial. And for the GCC, the needs to access cutting-edge technology and expertise across the board that Europe can provide. Therefore, what we need to focus on is high growth potential sectors, sectors that have complementary strength between Europe and the GCC, and sectors that obviously have stabilizing effects, where the investment will lead to quick wins in terms of job creation, more food and energy security, and resilience across economic shocks. Examples of those sectors, without going into too many details, infrastructure development, I think, is very important, creates connectivity. It cannot be overstated how important this is for Europe and the GCC to integrate economically through cross-border transport, energy corridors, trade logistics, as mentioned earlier. Not only they can create jobs, those projects, but also foster a very valuable interdependence. Second, a digital transformation and technology. Again, this is extremely important. We live in a digital age. Transformation is reshaping economy globally, and that's a big focus in the GCC, where Europe has a powerful and meaningful edge. Third is agriculture and agri-tech. This is where I think also the GCC has a lot of needs, and Europe has a lot of resources, so they can be complementarity to provide food security and resource management. Fourth, in my opinion, is everything related to sustainable development, because Europe is a leader in that field, and the GCC, given the history in terms of fossil fuels, is also extremely focused to lead the way in renewable, especially solar, wind, where they have plenty of resources. So these are examples, in my opinion, which in conclusion, I would say, given the macroeconomic challenges and opportunity that we're facing in Europe, and the GCC making enhancing trade and investment flows a necessity, I think we should focus on those key sectors and unlock the shared prosperity that also will promote stability and resilience. But again, I think I want to emphasize what I started in the introduction. All this talk cannot be achieved without political stability, which is sustainable. Just like Europe managed to create stability through economic partnerships and through resolving the political issues, the Middle East is suffering from the long-standing conflict and injustice created by the Israeli-Palestinian issue. It's not sustainable. There's no justification for those injustices to remain there. And I think unless there is a big effort from the European in particular, because they're closer to the situation, to address this conflict and the injustice, we will remain in an unstable environment.
I totally agree with you. You touched on two areas that I believe are very important for the next question, logistics and technology. And the question is, what kind of potential can Lebanon, as a country that is located strategically and has so much potential in terms of its human capital, offer this collaboration between Europe and the GCC?
Absolutely. So as we know, again, Lebanon historically played a key role of a platform for investment and collaboration between Europe and the GCC. Lebanon, up to the 70s, was the major, effectively, hub for business being done between Europe and the GCC across a large number of sectors. Unfortunately, Lebanon obviously was hit by crisis after crisis, starting with the civil war between 75 and 1990, and lost a large part of that role. And today, the business and the collaboration between the GCC and Europe is now done directly in many instances. Having said that, that does not mean that Lebanon cannot regain part of its role and reshape it to the new world effectively and adapt it to the new situation and take advantage of its main attributes. So despite these challenges that Lebanon is going through, we are always hopeful that Lebanon remains a land of extraordinary opportunities and is very well strategically positioned to serve as this bridge between those two dynamic regions, which are Europe and the GCC. But having said that, Lebanon, and obviously, you know, we all are acknowledge the fact that not only our geographical position is extremely strategic, but we also in Lebanon have a pool of human capital that is invaluable and that has proved always extremely dynamic and able to adapt, and therefore valuable for such a collaboration and for bringing Lebanon back to a role of bridge between Europe and the GCC, again, in specific sectors. I don't think Lebanon can be a bridge across all sectors. It's not necessarily needed. And that's why I think our role needs to be driven by an economic vision. Like, what is the economic vision for Lebanon? What's its role in the 21st century and in the era of the fourth industrial revolution? How can we basically regain our role but also adapt to this new macroeconomic environment and to the evolution in the GCC and in Europe? If Lebanon is to rebound and fully leverage its strategic potential, it requires a clear and actionable economic vision. Unfortunately, today, such comprehensive vision and a roadmap with recovery is still absent from the thinking, the collective thinking of the political ruling class in Lebanon, for reasons I will not get into. But I think they lack the vision to not only implement small measures of reform, but also to think long-term about how to empower Lebanon and the Lebanese population in order to play their role and thrive again. We need to define our national priorities, establish a framework for attracting investment in areas where we have competitive edge. And I think this is crucial. Now, obviously, from where I sit, there is a few important themes I want to stress, okay? The first is a defined economic vision is important to attract stability and investor confidence. If we don't have a vision, there is a lot of competition out there. Why would investors come to Lebanon if we don't have a clear economic vision and a clear direction and a commitment to reform and transparency? So there's a whole environment that we need to create in order to bring in investment and confidence. The second important point for me is we need to identify key growth sectors which diversify our economy, which are adapted to our economy, as I mentioned earlier. In particular, in my opinion, technology is very important because it's a capital light, a human, it's a financial capital light and human capital heavy sector, therefore very well adapted to the nature of Lebanon, a small country with limited financial resources, but with invaluable and substantial human capital resources. So technology for me is a priority in terms of priority sectors for Lebanon. Renewable energy, I think, can be a sector for us. Tourism, obviously, and finance, where we have a history and we have the talent. A targeted approach is very important to optimize resources and create a story and a narrative for investors. The vision also must include investment in modernizing Lebanon infrastructure. I think Dr. Shahab mentioned that earlier. Ports, airport, digital networks. We have a lot of work to do in order to play a role. Yes, we are a logistics hub. Yes, we're very well positioned on the Mediterranean, but without the right infrastructure, it's pointless. And clearly, we have the capacity to be integrated with both the GCC and Europe. This is what makes Lebanon very special culturally, historically, from even politically. We've always had, and this should be a priority, excellent relationship with the European Union and the European Mediterranean and the GCC. And this puts us in an extremely well-positioned place to create synergies between those two important blocks. So such Lebanon. Sorry?
I was saying Lebanon definitely has the historical curve that allows it, and the learning curve and the capital in terms of human capital, to allow it to bridge these two places and to benefit from the opportunities in between. I would like to thank you for your contribution. And we really enjoyed this overview of Lebanon's potential. Lebanon's potential is underrated. It's not being spoken enough about, and it's very important to really bring out this potential and what is needed to develop it to the maximum. So thank you so much for that, former Minister Adel Afiouni.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I hope to have you guests in the next future. Again.
With pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.